Minister, why should we continue to give tens of millions of euros every single year to the greyhound racing industry? The key issue for me is the issues in terms of animal cruelty. But even from the point of view of value for money, if you read the Sunday Times over the last couple of weeks, they expose the fact that greyhound industry insiders make up over half of race attendees, and that all of the state funding into the Irish greyhound industry is effectively being lost because it ends up subsidising the low-cost sale of dogs to the UK.
Thanks for the question, Deputy Murphy. So, the 2021 Power Report found that the greyhound industry provides and supports considerable employment, both directly and indirectly across the economy, and it estimated that in 2019 the industry supported over 4,000 full-time and part-time jobs in the economy. In addition, there are over 6,000 active greyhound owners, and the total number of people deriving economic benefit from the sector was estimated at around 10,000. The Department provides dedicated financial support under the Horse and Greyhound Fund to Rasia Con Éireann, who is the statutory body responsible for the operation and regulation of the greyhound industry. And since 2021, my department has ring-fenced 10% of the Rasia Con Éireann allocation from the Horse and Greyhound Racing Fund for welfare matters. In addition, the Greyhound Racing Act of 2019 develops the legislative basis for the industry, strengthening the integrity and welfare of the industry. A key element of the new legislation is the provision for the first time of a full IT traceability system for racing greyhounds too. The funding provided to the greyhound sector helps maintain and sustain long-standing tradition, as the industry is part of the social fabric of our country, and the funding underpins economic activity in what are in many instances particularly rural areas. The future of the industry is dependent on a strong governance platform and on the industry having the highest standards of integrity and welfare. There is a strong commitment to improved animal welfare in this sector in the programme for government. The Department remains focused on ensuring that Rasia Con Éireann are compliant with the Code of Practice for the governance of state bodies, including agreement in the form of a shareholders' letter of expectation, which is produced annually and updated as required. The annual report and accounts, Deputy, of Rasia Con Éireann are audited as well by the Controller and Auditors General Office and presented to the Oireachtas. So we are very committed to the continued strengthening of welfare standards in the greyhound industry, and future funding of the sector is continued on animal welfare standards being upheld, and this is reflected in the annual parameters set out by my officials in their liaison with Rasia Con Éireann. Thank you.
Thanks. Minister, the public is funding not only an industry responsible for the deaths of 6,000 greyhounds a year because they're not fast enough, but we're also funding the British greyhound racing industry. So an analysis reported by the Sunday Times by Preferred Results business consultants found that 6,300 Irish greyhounds are exported annually to the UK, sold at a loss of almost €5,000 each. Effectively, it's a direct subsidy from the public through the greyhound racing industry to the British greyhound racing. So, whatever about the rights or wrongs of funding the Irish greyhound racing industry, why on earth are we effectively funding the British greyhound racing industry? Or why are we funding the greyhound racing industry whereby over half of those attending greyhound races are getting complimentary tickets? In other words, they are to some degree insiders. There isn't a big public appetite, there aren't queues of people to go to this. Why are we still providing public funding?
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy Murphy. Well, the reason we're providing public funds is because there has been a structure and a support in place for the greyhound industry over many years now, which is particularly important to it and particularly important to supporting it. And that's something that we are continuing. Obviously, the structure and the oversight of that is really important. The legislative underpinning for the whole sector was significantly changed and strengthened in 2019 through the Greyhound Act that we introduced through this Dáil and through the Seanad. And going forward is going to be, while the funding is important, what's going to be really crucial as well is that public support, that people attending greyhound racing, that public participation. So it's really important for Rasia Con Éireann to very much focus on that, to focus on their engagement with the wider public, to make sure that our racetracks have strong public attendances, because that's really important for its future health. But both of those aspects are important, and certainly the public funding plays an important part in underpinning the industry too, Deputy Murphy.
The public has provided €310 million for the greyhound industry since 2001. It's a huge amount of money, without which I don't think the greyhound racing industry would continue in this country, and I think that would be a good thing in terms of animal welfare. I would emphasise, of course, that nobody should be out of a job as a consequence of that. There needs to be a just transition for those involved in the greyhound racing industry, with everybody guaranteed a job of at least equivalent terms and conditions and so on. I would ask the Minister to respond to the Sunday Times reports, in particular the fact that we're subsidising low-cost dogs going to Britain, that the majority of Irish public funding provided to Greyhound Racing Ireland effectively goes in support of the British greyhound industry, that the Irish greyhound industry is sustaining a shortfall of over €30 million a year in supplying greyhounds to the UK. Thanks.
Minister to conclude.
Our public funding here, Deputy Murphy, goes into our racetracks. It goes into funding prize money, which helps support the industry and underpin the industry. And underpin the jobs that are there as well. And also our funding goes into welfare measures in terms of supporting the welfare of dogs too. So that's what our funding goes into. As you say, without the funding, the greyhound industry would be very much undermined. I know you've no problem with it doing away with it altogether. You wouldn't be a big advocate of industries in general, or business in general, and I know this is one that you would like to see erased altogether, but it does provide employment. It's also an important part of our social and people's lives. Not a big part of everyone's lives, but certainly for many in our country, we have to value that as well. But what's really important going forward is, alongside that public funding, that we see economic revenue generated through participation. That's a really important task for us at Conair in relation to ensuring that revenue streams are improved. Thank you.